Welcome to the Unlimit podcast. I'm your host, Paul Varzensteiner, and I'm excited to say that our guest on today's podcast is Marc De Mesel. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, Paul. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I know that the BCH community loves to hear all of your ideas and insights, so yeah, it's great. It's great to chat.
Yeah, and the pleasure is mine. I don't do many interviews, so I'm very honored.
The honor is definitely mine then. Okay, so let's dive right in then. So I mean, the initial question is, what got you involved in Bitcoin Cash? What was it about Bitcoin Cash that kind of grabbed you and made you think, okay, this is something I need to get involved with?
Uh, for me, I came in as an investor, actually, and also I was listening to Freedom podcasts at the time of Stefan Molyneux. It was called Free Domain Radio. I was listening to in the earliest 2009. I got fascinated by that, and Bitcoin, and there were always listeners' questions, and so from time to time somebody asked a question about Bitcoin, and I was investing already in gold and silver, but I was rejecting it the first 3 4 times I heard about it. I thought it didn't make sense. It wouldn't work. A deflationary currency with a limited supply, because I thought like the value will go up, so people won't be using it, um, uh, and and um, and so that won't work as a currency. But then later, I got a friend who was really fascinated also by it, and I started to ask some critical questions to him, like, okay, how can that then work? And he had good answers on it, and that really changed my mind. And also the price, like the price, it was. I knew already as an investor that you have booms and busts and hypes, and so it was hype. Actually, we were already past 2011, so it was already 2012, and I had heard from Bitcoin from time to time, and I've seen the bubble, the price go up a lot and then crashed a lot. But then, after asking some critical questions to my friend, he had some good answers, and that changed my mind. Um, he said that people do use it, even though the value goes up, people do use it, and so yeah, it started to make sense for me, and that's how I started investing in Bitcoin by the end of 2012, and then I followed the whole scene for years and invested in it. And then in 2017, but I saw that that arrogance from Bitcoin maximalists already early in. I didn't understand it at first. Like, why are they bitching on Satoshi dies? That's great. They use the Bitcoin blockchain and they create lots of transactions. And a bunch of people bitching and whining and moaning about that. It didn't make any sense to me. But it just got worse from there. Um, then the ridiculous debate about scaling, which made no sense to me. But it even got so far that they actually won, which I had totally not expected that such an irrational position could win. But yeah, of course, I also had knowledge. I also learned more about the government and the state, and so the government really. And I studied more about other currencies, like yeah, I I started to understand more the way the world worked, and that the government really uses lots of violence to keep its dominance over the population, and that also means attacking competing currencies by outlawing it, and if it's not possible to outlaw it, by sabotaging it. And so the whole thing that happened to Bitcoin started to make sense for me. Like, okay, it's either government or it's competition. Like the banking world, of course, is also threatened by it, but Bitcoin basically has been hijacked, and these people don't have the best. Like, it's not actually, it's not an irrational position. It's a very rational approach. If you want to clamp down on it, if you want to like slow down the growth, that's actually the best you can do. Is making transactions expensive. And if you want to rent seek it, such as the banking system and the government does all the time with currencies, issue more currency out of thin air, and basically thereby screw over the currency holders and inflate the supply and lower the value. Well, that's the business they are in, and yeah, that's actually what they try to do also with Bitcoin. And so basically, it's actually very, from that perspective, what they are doing makes lots of sense. But of course, it's not the kind of thing we want to build. So that came to a standoff when Segwit was implemented in 2017. You had a bunch of people that forked BTC, Bitcoin, right before it, and did raise the block size. And for me, I was already before when I heard about that, I was fully in support of it, and I didn't understand why Roger Ver, for example, took so long to really support such an initiative. He was still hoping on a compromise with Segwit, with the other side, and still hoping that things could be held together. But I had given my hope already up before, a year before actually the split, and so I had already divested all my BTC into other currencies such as Ethereum and many others. But early 2017 I did that. But then when finally there was a fork and there was a Bitcoin again that was scaling and that made sense, then I just started investing big in it from day one in August the 1st in 2017. And I've continued to invest big in it since then. So that's my story.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't know you got involved so early. I think it's really important for people to understand that, especially if you weren't around at the time, it's probably quite hard to believe how different the original ideals and plan and social contract for Bitcoin was back then. And, this didn't change, from one day to the next, but it did change over a very short space of time, something like in the order of 6 months. We went from aiming Bitcoin at being useful for everyone around the whole world, used for payments as a version of cash, like was described in a white paper, to suddenly being, no, this is just for essentially rich people, and it's not really an inclusive system. So yeah, that's really interesting to know that you were also around to see all of that. So you've provided a really good summary of what happened on BTC Bitcoin. So that kind of brings us to the creation of Bitcoin Cash. Obviously, we won't go deep into that, but one of the key issues that come up within Bitcoin Cash was obviously the dev tax and Bitcoin ABC trying to add IFP or a tax onto the network because they felt that voluntary funding was not possible for them, that people would not voluntarily give them enough money to be able to continue to develop what they wanted to develop on Bitcoin Cash. Well, we now know that their attempt to add this tax to Bitcoin Cash failed, and they are no longer part of the network. But one of the counterpoints to them was essentially Flipstart. It provided a service to be able to easily provide voluntary funding to projects. And as yourself being one of the major backers of many of these Flipstart projects, I'm interested to know whether you consider this to be a success and whether you think it will continue to be viable going forward.
Yeah, it's been really voluntary funding really took off thanks to basically Amaris Séché trying to hijack the project and trying to make the case that it doesn't work. It has actually helped, although I realize many people that they need to donate more to infrastructure funding and to marketing and to coding projects of Bitcoin Cash. Um, so that's the good actually that came out of it. That so in a way we have to thank Maurice Chef for that. Um, but but it was very disappointing to discover what drove Amaris Sheh because he was a real hero of Bitcoin Cash the first few years. He was courageous. Unlike so many other people, he was courageous together with Free Trade and some other people to do it and to fork off Bitcoin Cash away from Bitcoin BTC. It was absolutely necessary, and they did it just in time, just before Segwit got implemented and the code base became much more complex and so he had done a lot of good, but yeah, to discover that Ale, actually, I was a little bit blind to it, but there were already some voices speaking up. Like he wasn't managing it well already a year before that. He was pushing away talented developers. He was trying to keep its grip over the project too tight, and it was not open to innovations very much. And so there were already problems, but but it's once he but yeah, he just became bigger and bigger of a problem. He started to really complain on Roger Ver that Roger Ver was not donating enough money to him. But like that wasn't fair because Roger Ver doesn't have an obligation to donate money to him. So that's really the wrong way also to raise money. Like if you depend on donations, you cannot do that by bitching on people. Like that's not gonna work. Huh? You always have to do that by being nice to people. Huh? So it was a bit strange the kind of approach he was taking there. Um, but digging more in, so when I saw that happening, I was like, okay, he does have a point. He does. It is important that infrastructure projects like his Bitcoin ABC client gets donations, and so Roger Ver organized a donation, um, uh, um, uh, a fundraiser in the middle of 2019 in August, and so I participated in that heavily, and I donated a lot to both Bitcoin ABC, but also the other projects there, and even there was even a general development fund managed by David Allen. Also, I gave big to that, but I was very surprised of the reaction. Like later, like Amr Shishay and David Allen didn't say a word about the donations that they had received. And it was a lot for me. That was a lot at the time that I had given them. It was in total about 800 BCH, even almost 1000 BCH. But yeah, we just had a big bear market behind us. The value of Bitcoin Cash was maybe $150 a coin, um, or 200 maybe. But yeah, actually, I had donated to the big money. I more than half came from me. So I was really, as I always do when I give a lot to people, I'm curious how they're gonna respond, especially when I give it anonymously. Like I like to see how they respond, just to see. Hopefully that they are grateful about it. It makes me happy. But Amarista Shea didn't say a word about it. David Allen also not. So I didn't understand that. So after like 2 months of waiting and checking their different social medias, I started to ask them like, "Did you get the money?" Uh, and so, uh, 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 yes, they did. They did. Like Roger Ver did because Roger Ver had organized it, but Roger Ver did transfer the money. So why don't you say anything about it? And then she just said like, yeah, but we can't use the money because the Roger Ver fucked it up, and he 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 did a fundraiser for all kind of teams, and we didn't support that. And then he also like didn't do the KYC well, and so we can't use the funds because we don't know where it's coming from. And so I had to start a personal conversation with him then on Telegram. And so I said to him like, okay, I can give you like a paper that says how much I gave, and then you have a source, and then you can use that money. Huh? And he said, okay, yeah, that seems like a good solution. Let me get back to you. But he never came back to me. So then I realized like I was already suspecting it, but then I knew for sure like he's just making up excuses. He's not honest. Because if it would be true, he would immediately come back to get that paper so he can use the money. But that was not true. He didn't need that paper because he never came back for it. So what was going on there? While he was just being difficult. Huh? He was not grateful for the money he got. And he was basically trying to make the point that voluntary donations do not work. And and so he could continue his narrative that people are not giving enough money to him, and um, he should change the business model of Bitcoin Cash. That was what he was doing, huh? And that's why he was bitching on Roger Ver, not because he wanted money. No, because then you don't bitch on someone, then you are like being polite to someone. No, what he was doing was he was trying to make a point to not Roger Ver, but to the community, to everybody, like, look, it's not working and we need to change this. But he wasn't yet saying how he wanted to change it. That was for later. Huh? But in the end, he came with the real story, like how he wanted to change it, and probably had been brewing in his mind for years. Huh? And he wanted to do a dash system, that NZ cash system. and get a piece of the inflation for him, and making the calculation that would set him for life. And would also really strengthen his position in the project. This was not only about financially being set for life, but also being put in a position where there's no competition and he cannot be competed away. As so many people try to do in every company, and in every coding project, you will sometimes see people work like that. But at the expense of the project's growth, if they are not great performers themselves, and usually they are not. That's why they go to such strategies, because they really know deep inside that they don't offer much value. And they will not be able to compete if they open it up, and if they let talent flourish. Then it will become clear that, well, that they don't offer so much value. So they change to other strategies. What was your question again? Because I got on a tangent there.
Yeah, you've covered some important history there, but my initial question was just about whether you consider voluntary funding to be a success, but I just want to respond to some of the key points that you made there. So yeah, I can verify everything that you've said, and I agree completely with the things that you've said. Um, their initial argument was, it's not a tax, because no men with guns were holding, forcing anyone to pay it. It was a voluntary system. But and that's true. There's no men with guns forcing anyone to pay that tax. But the goal of a tax is to centralize power into the hands of the government, and do that through financial means. And the IFP essentially had the same goal. It tried to centralize the control and finances of Bitcoin Cash into the hands of ABC, and also get rid of competition. So it's a kind of, in my opinion, it's a distinction without a significant difference. Okay, so to bring us a little further along the Bitcoin Cash story, obviously the response to the IFP dev tax was for some very talented and hardworking people to develop the software Flipstarter, which allows people to crowdfund anything they want, essentially. They did it at a rapid speed to get it out there, and it's been used now. Off the top of my head, it's probably something like $1.5 million worth of funding have gone through it. Many different campaigns. I suppose my question to you is, do you feel this is a long-term viable way of continuing to fund both development and in general like other things happening in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem? Is this the solution, or is something else needed?
Yes, absolutely. Like I think that yeah, it's down to the philosophy that you shouldn't initiate a violence or force to get what you want, because it will not lead to the great results for you, and also not for the other person, especially not for the other person who you're forcing to. I discovered this philosophy only later in life, the voluntarist philosophy, of voluntarism, or also known as how do you call it, Anarcho Capitalism. And I think that really works also for a society. Yes, of course, sometimes you have to initiate violence. For example, you're sitting in a boat and someone wants to pick a hole in it. Yeah, you're going to have to violently stop that person. And that's right to do. But if you're gonna raise money to force people to contribute to build a boat, if you don't contribute, you don't get to be sitting in the boat. Like you can make it a private project. But also in personal relationships, if you're not happy with your partner, or someone else, or a friend, of doing certain things, like, yeah, initiating violence is not very smart to get what you want, because um, it just it's not it's much better to leave people free. And if they don't want what you want, like, look for other people, instead of trying to force people to do things. And it's also in business like that. And so if you look at Bitcoin Cash as a project, the voluntary funding works very well because people are really free to donate or not with their own hard-earned money, and so people really think very well. Like, I am I going to give of my own money to this project or not? And so people really have to I do great things and be very good at what they do to be able to raise money, and that makes that creates quality. So yeah, it has been working very well, and I think it will continue to work very well as long as people are smart. Like actually, like I'm being praised a lot these days as saving Bitcoin Cash and as a very giving person, but there's a lot of selfishness about this also. Like I'm just smart because I'm just doing it for my certain amount of it. Spending to to projects that create public infrastructure is the wise thing to do. Yeah, okay, you could also not do that and let's say be egoistic and let other people do that, but you don't do it yourself. But well, yeah, you can do that, but it also doesn't create much satisfaction. Like you do get lots of satisfaction also when you contribute to the community. To people will also praise you for it and thank you for it, and there's many other things that come back. Like for example, let's say you have a business in a certain country, public infrastructure, gifts, as it has happened before when there was no state. Often the rich people from the area would build certain roads and they would fund it. But what would happen? Rich guy put a road down there. And thereby he gets other opportunities, such as maybe the pretty daughter of some poor person will be more interested in you because you have a good reputation to marry and make children, or maybe some genius guy with a little money has a great business plan. Well, he'll come to you because he knows you have money, but you also have a good heart. So you get the best business opportunities. Like there's a lot of selfish things to gain by funding the public infrastructure projects. So it works very well, but you have to be smart about it. If you have a country, let's say, full of egoistic people that don't, they become rich, but they don't contribute anything to the public infrastructure, well, then you'll have shitty roads, and then you can have a very prosperous company, but if you have shitty roads, it's gonna also, like, your company will limit its growth because you have shitty roads. So your growth will be limited also. So a currency full of egoists, yeah, that will in the end also limit its growth very much. And we see exactly all these dynamics happen with our other Bitcoin version, Bitcoin BTC, where you have many more egoists that only like think about themselves and not about building something of value for people, for the community. And so they're just sitting on their coins, hoping it will go up a lot, but nobody is really like sacrificing anything to build out a currency, to use it, for example, with merchants, to spend it, to give it to other people, to get them started for free. So as a result, in the long run, the growth will stop there. That's how these dynamics work. So yeah, voluntary funding is the philosophy of voluntarism, and embracing it and understanding it, how important it is to share and to give uh, for for yourself, is super important and works the best, especially for a currency that is so fragile. Like cryptocurrency has so many enemies and violent enemies, and so you really have to like be a sacred project to be immune to those very aggressive attackers. Um, so for example, with Ripple today, you see that like, okay, they build it out as a business. Well, they're the first to fall because the prey walking around, the government regulators, so they see an easy prey. This guy is building a currency as a business. Okay, we have a bunch of regulations here that we can use as an excuse to basically squeeze billions out of this company and basically take it down in the process. And voila, that's one less competitor, and we made a few billion on top of it, and he's out. next. They look for the weakest prey, huh? And the weakest prey are those that are built out as a business. The currencies are built out as a business with a business model that is traditional, such as selling ICO coins. That's raising money. That's doing an IPO. That's gonna be easy to attack, huh? Or having a piece of the inflation go to one group, is also closer to a business model. That's also, and it centralizes the power into just a few people, like you see with Dash and Zcash, and these are easy to attack not only via regulations but also via the more dark attacks, such as, well, as they say, you just threaten them, to imprison them, or to you just confiscate, you just put yeah, you can easily charge, make accusations via court, and have all the bank accounts blocked of a private person that runs such a project. That will certainly I open them up to possibly cooperate. They can do a lot to threaten a person behind the scenes, and that's actually what I was also thinking that might have happened to Amerische, because it was such a big change, because he used to be really a voluntarist, an anarcho capitalist, and talk like that. So he's really changed a lot. So I was thinking maybe that happened to him, but no, I don't think it was even that. I think it was just stupidity, and greed, that overcame him, um, and arrogance. It wasn't even a state actor threatening him, but okay, that could have happened also. So yeah, I do think, therefore, voluntary funding is super important, and as Bitcoin Cash holders and investors and users, yeah, over time we really, I hope many more people also become more active there, because indeed today I've done a big piece of it, and actually the totals are a lot bigger. You have many donations via the flip starters, but you also have many donations that didn't go via the flip starters. So I would estimate there's at least 10,000 BCH over the past half year that has been donated to public infrastructure.
Yeah, I agree. A very significant amount of funding has been poured into various projects on Bitcoin Cash by you and many others in the community. You've just said some extremely insightful things. Just one thing I'd like to amplify out of that was the your thoughts about voluntary funding and how it benefits people. Like, when people are allowed to interact and make trades with each other voluntarily, then everyone works to get a trade that benefits themselves. So all voluntary trades, in theory, should come out with both parties or all parties involved in that trade coming out with a win. So it's like a win-win situation, and this is what lifts up society. And also to your other point about voluntary funding, in that what is a good reason for people to actually go and support the projects that they appreciate on Flipstarter, is that although Bitcoin Cash or cryptocurrency is a kind of a virtual concept, it doesn't exist necessarily in the physical world, the impacts of having a cryptocurrency actually achieve mass adoption is that it can positively improve people's lives around the world. In fact, I would say that Bitcoin Cash's main differentiating factor between the communities of BCH and, let's say, BTC, is that BCH is 100% committed to improving the lives of people around the world. Like, I'm sure there's many people, I mean everyone even, that would love to make tons of money from Bitcoin Cash increasing massively in price, but I would say many more people in the BCH community would be even happier if we can actually improve the lives of people around the world. That for me seems to be the main point that's different for BCH. So to take the conversation in a slightly different direction, I know you're an investor, so it'd be interesting to talk about, like, what is your investment strategy behind Bitcoin Cash? I mean, obviously, if you own Bitcoin Cash right now, you expect it to go up in the future in price, but do you see Bitcoin Cash as an extremely good long-term investment? Is this just something that's good for the short term and then things are kind of uncertain? What position do you see Bitcoin Cash in right now? And what challenges and opportunities can you see for Bitcoin Cash in the future?
Yeah, I think BCH was actually in really big trouble. Actually, it's still like 3 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. If you looked at the amount of transactions, it was not going up. Uh, However, Ethereum, for example, was going up in amount of transactions and a lot of activity going on there. Developers building lots of DeFi applications on top of it. Lots of innovation happening there. So even though I had been working hard and investing hard in Bitcoin Cash, it wasn't going well. And there was a problem. And but I've become much more optimistic. Actually, I sold all my Bitcoin Cash the day that the IFP was announced. Um, and also like it was IFP was announced, and also it was valued relatively high Bitcoin Cash compared to Ethereum. It was 2 to 1. So basically, if you sold a Bitcoin Cash, you got 2 Ethereum in exchange. Um, that's only a year or a year and a half ago. And at the same time, this IFP was proposed, and actually it had quite some a lot a DevTex by Amari was proposed, and he had still lots of influence in the community. And I was very surprised there was lots of support for it also initially. And combining these things, I said, no, this is like the risk has gone up a lot here for Bitcoin Cash, and I don't see it succeed like this. And it's actually valued relatively high compared to Ethereum. So I sold all my Bitcoin Cash, or almost all, for Ethereum. And then later, I ended up selling it all my Ethereum for fiat because the Corona crisis was heading our way, and I thought chances were high that the markets would crash. Um, and then later, when the Corona crash happened, I got back into crypto, and I wanted still to invest like half in Bitcoin Cash, half in Ethereum, because by that time it already became clear that actually the DevTax Carver, I think, also had plans that it's going to happen. So I had more belief again in Bitcoin Cash. And I try to do about 50-50 Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash. But Bitcoin Cash price wasn't crashing as much as the Ethereum price. So I ended up actually buying more Ethereum than Bitcoin Cash. Um, but over the past year in 2020, then um, there was lots of good happened then because more and more people started to fight the dev tax, and a lots of intelligent people really started to develop these new tools that I to be really safe Bitcoin Cash, and especially like imaginary username, emergent reasons, uh, 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 people that were actually building any hedge behind the scene via the company's general protocols. Their whole plan fell to the ground once Omri tried to implement a dev tax. So they also realized like, okay, we need to now start save Bitcoin Cash or it's over and out for us. And so they dropped they put it on hold, the any hedge project, and start to really like build Flipstarter. They invented Flipstarter, but Flipstarter was really built on the idea that Mike Hearn launched at the time when he was trying to save Bitcoin BTC. There was the same dynamic going on where the core developers were bitching and whining about not having enough funding, voluntary funding. And at the time, Olivier Janssens, for example, donated a lot to the Bitcoin Foundation. But what happened was that they squandered the money, and you wouldn't believe it, but even David Allen at the time was part of the Bitcoin Foundation and it was accused of squandering a big piece of that money. Um, and so it was really a repeat of history what happened in Bitcoin Cash, where again the core developers start to bitch on a lack of funding, and again David Allen was involved in trying to raise money and then squander it onto who knows what private expenses, I suspect, and lifestyle. But over that year, okay, Flipstarter were invented, and that was really what really Bitcoin needed to push that voluntary funding that really failed also in Bitcoin BTC at the time, because yeah, you had some whales that donated big to the Bitcoin Foundation, but it was so centralized, it was easily squandered, and then you're back at zero. And so you needed to really to create a culture of voluntary funding, and also you needed to make it much more um, attractive to donate. And Flipstarter really solves that. by creating these assurance contracts, meaning that actually you can pledge instead of donating, you just pledge first and you watch what other people pledge. And only if the total amount of money that is asked for is pledged, only then your money goes from your account. And in the meantime, you can still cancel your pledge. And so you can first see like how much are other people giving before you give yourself, and you or you can give yourself and wait till enough people give. And and you get a reputation. That's very important. Like you donate, you want to get some reputation in exchange. You lose your money, what do you get in return? You should get some reputation, positive reputation in return, and you need a system for that that shows your name, and how much you give. And so Flipstarter solved all these things. And at the time developed with Lighthouse, but they failed to do it because there was too much toxicity in the Bitcoin BTC community already that really suppressed these projects. And they basically kicked out Mike Hearn and later the other guy, what's his name? The lead dev
Gavin Andresen.
also kicked him out. Yeah, Gavin Andresen. And so they had thereby and there was no competition or very little competition of other clients, and thereby they had really monopolized the development, and they could just ignore these innovations like what Mike Hearn tried with Lighthouse. Um, but so this imaginary username and emergent reasons, these people are beyond any hedge, and also Free Trader, who was initially started the fork of Bitcoin Cash together with Amaris Seche, but was kicked out by Amaris Seche, as were many other people kicked out of the project by Amaris Seche over time. But he came back and he also tried to save Bitcoin Cash. And so all these people and many others, Jonathan Silverwood, and there are many others also, like I don't know all the names. These are coders. Uh, they, 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 they created this flip starter, and they also created the BCHN client, an alternative client to Bitcoin ABC. But you already had some other clients. You had also BCHD and but there were then some, and you had also, of course, BU, of course, Bitcoin Unlimited. So you had some clients, but they didn't have enough support in the community to challenge the authority of Bitcoin ABC. So by creating this new client BCHN that was supported by different people from the other clients, they really were able to gather enough support to be an alternative to the Bitcoin ABC client for miners, because that and exchanges, because that's what you really needed. You needed like to have something as an alternative that miners and exchanges could flip to, and so they did an amazing job there, and of course, also Roger Ver and Mike Mike. Sorry, I forgot his last name. Yes, Komaratsky, and also Mark Lamp and many of the clients like and me too. We all worked hard to convince miners and convince exchanges to flip to BCHN or some other client, so that the project doesn't get hijacked by Bitcoin ABC, and so that it doesn't get a death tax. So it was a big job, but in the meantime, the amount of transactions didn't go up. Like there was no real adoption for Bitcoin Cash, and that was still a major problem. And so even when then Bitcoin ABC failed in hijacking the project, and okay, there was a great change of leadership, and even after funding all these projects voluntarily of all these clients and marketing campaigns, that was all very good. But the results is what counts, and the amount of transactions wasn't going up. So it wasn't looking good still for Bitcoin Cash for me. And I was like planning to, if I get another opportunity to invest in crypto, invest more in Ethereum and not in Bitcoin Cash, because, well, you do need to see adoption as an investor. You cannot ignore that. You have to keep your feet on the ground, and even if you love a project, the results need to be there, and that's adoption, and people need to use it. And it wasn't really there, and what I thought was that the strategy of focusing on merchant adoption just wasn't sufficient. Brick and mortar adoption, no, it wouldn't work, because it's just too few clients in any area that have Bitcoin Cash that will use it with a merchant. And so the merchant will drop it after a while, and you're back at zero. Um, I thought that was the wrong approach. You should really focus on online shops at least, because that has a much wider target. But even that was probably not sufficient. What you should succeed at is seeing it adopted in online communities, like the porn industry or dark markets or social networks. And probably it should be new applications like innovations, a combination of these elements, and probably that would be how cryptocurrency gets traction somewhere. And it wasn't there for Bitcoin Cash yet. So I wasn't that confident about it. But a lot changed the past 3 months, especially the past month. Um, um, I think Retold Cash was a great project uh, launched by Simon a year ago about. But in the beginning, I didn't see it, but it started to get traction when there was this whole commotion about the death tax, and then I also started to use it. And the guy that developed that, he did a great job. It was user friendly. It was very easy to start out and just fund your account with Bitcoin Cash and start tipping other people. Very user friendly. And I was like, wow, this guy, why didn't I find it? Memo.cash and Member.cash, like these are social networks using Bitcoin Cash and using the blockchain. Um, uh, uh, but but it didn't get traction. And why? Because it's not user friendly enough. And even the basic idea to pay to post isn't the right business model. People don't want to pay for every tweet that they post. That People don't even want their tweet on the blockchain. I think it's a very niche market that would do that. The mass market is not interested in that. But the Read to Cash did it like the right way. Like it's user friendly. It's just email and you're signed up immediately. Didn't even have to confirm your email. Immediately can fund your account. Immediately can tip. Immediately can withdraw the money. Like very user friendly with just a few clicks. And that's super important to get mass adoption. So I thought that this guy is doing a great job. So that's the first thing. But still, amount of transactions wasn't going up. Was a nice website, but yeah, but I did donate, started to donate and first tip big to certain articles, but then he started with the idea of a fund, which would then automatically tip people. And at first I thought that was not a good idea, but then actually I could see his vision. And so, okay, I also donate to that fund. And indeed, that fund is tipping every day now for $500 and probably will go up over time to all kind of authors that have a good reputation and that create quality articles. But of course, this is not really like, if you look at the statistics, I don't see like, yeah, in the beginning it was big growth, but it has been flattening off. Um, it's also not really a killer app. Um, so, what really changed the past month is with Noise.cash. That was also from him, and it was the idea that okay, people really don't want to write articles. Only very few people want to do that, but many people want to post tweets, short messages, and so let's do that. And actually, the Read Cash was more and more used that way. Also, people just post very short articles. It wasn't not meant for that, but people do that, and so that's why I started Noise.cash, and also and so and that's been really exploding. And also me, like yeah, I wrote in total 2 articles, and now another 2 articles, but I only use the website Read.cash to really read and tip, but not to write. But I am a very active. I use Twitter a lot, and I think that so for something as Noise.cash really attracts me to use me and many other people, and so we see that that's explosive. And what he also did there was all these tips, because it's also working with a fund, and so everybody that's tweeting and posting gets automatically tips, but they are micro tips. It's very small tips, but so and that really motivates people to be active because they don't have to pay; they get paid to be active, and that's of course it's the golden grail. Like if you have a cryptocurrency, what you want to do is you want to give a small amount to as many people as possible to get them started with it because it costs you very little. and it's worth it. It's like giving a free sample of your new product. If you can do that, a very small sample, and you can distribute it to the whole world very cheaply, that's perfect. That's the way to get adoption. But it's so hard to do because it's so easy to trick it, and so many people try to with these Bitcoin faucets or with these how do you call that, airdrops, trick the system, and they try to get a lot of free samples, and they are not interested in adopting it. They're interested in dumping it for fiat, and so cryptocurrencies have not really succeeded with that. But he think, though I don't think it's that cheap. For example, in Read.Cash, a rough calculation is that you do pay about $200 per new user, a real user, someone who's really sticking with Bitcoin Cash. It does end up costing $200, but that is actually very profitable because the value of one real user is a lot higher than $200. I estimate it's around 10,000. That on average, a person will store about $10,000 of value in his favorite cryptocurrency. On average, some people that's a lot more when they are very rich, and other people that's a lot less when they are very poor. But on average, that's about $10,000. So if it costs you $200 to get a new user, you make actually a lot of profit there. And I think Cash is succeeding in that, but it reaches a very small amount of people. And so you can't see it in the amount of transactions exploring, for example, but you do can see it now with Cash. It's just explosive how it's growing and how many transactions it creates and how many new users it attracts. I think it's a lot higher than Cash, but we still have to find out what the cost then is of real adoption. But it's very promising, and it's something I was really missing is growing amount of transactions, and not fake transactions, like you can fake that so easily, but real transactions that make economical sense, that are profitable. Like you could say, like, okay, amount of transactions exploding now thanks to Noise Cash, but is that real economic utility? Will that lead to real new users, to real adoption? And I'm quite certain that it will, and that it does already, and that it really opens the hearts of many people towards Bitcoin Cash and makes them long-time savers of Bitcoin Cash holders and also promoters. So, so yeah, I do believe that's real economic activity we're seeing there.
Yeah, it's been actually really quite amazing over the last few weeks watching the number of Bitcoin Cash transactions kind of skyrocket thanks to Noise.cash. I was initially wondering what that was until I found out. And then when I looked at it and saw all these people like chatting and liking each other's posts and obviously just generating, financial transactions in a way that's actually really fun. So yeah, that was amazing to see. Also, what was also really interesting to see is one of the arguments that has been put against the, let's say the philosophy or theory of Bitcoin Cash's business model is that as soon as transaction numbers increase, fees will increase as well, like it did on Bitcoin. But of course, fees have not increased per transaction as the number of transactions have increased. Fees have gone down, in fact. This shows that on an unconstrained network, i.e., a network where the miners can include as many transactions as they physically can and are not constrained by developers' decisions, that fees just remain at a normal low cost instead of the extremely high cost of like $10 to $20 on BTC.
And to conclude, I like to say, like, so for me as an investor, like, the fundamentals look so good for Bitcoin Cash right now. Like, the price went up from like $200 to $400, $500. And I believe that we are going to go up a lot from here because we just reached the all-time high of 800 billion to 1 trillion of the previous top in 2017. And I think it's likely that from here we will go up very fast, the whole crypto industry, to about, in half a year, to about 7 trillion. So explosive growth in valuations, that always surprises so much. It's like the bull market surprised so much, but the bear markets also. It's in both directions. And with Bitcoin Cash, we certainly have seen that bear market was very painful. Going from a high of $4,000 to like $100 is just crazy. I lost 95% of my value that I had in Bitcoin Cash, and many others did too. And it really depressed, of course, the community, and saw many people leave, like in all cryptocurrencies. But I think that today because the amount of transactions has exploded and likely will continue to go up a lot, and it's really reaching many new users, much real adoption. And also you see that the amount of US dollars sent over the Bitcoin Cash network has gone up a lot also the past 3 months. Also very positive. These things they lead to very attractive valuations, because that's what I really missed in Bitcoin BTC the last 3 years. And why I thought that we were not ready for a bull market, and I was wrong, but I thought that the best indicator was that the NVT ratio is not going to favorable ratios. Like in the past, you would always see that once that the bull market only really starts when the amount of transactions goes up faster than the value of Bitcoin BTC. Huh? And usually that was because of new applications. And at the time, at the first, it was because of the dark market. Silk Road was invented, and then you had also the Satoshis, uh, and just general adoption. Actually, in the cycle, that was the first cycle, but then the cycle after in 2015, you had the bear market, the early bull market in 2016. You really saw adoption by many companies for Bitcoin as a currency, and so they were like, and you could see that the amount of transactions start to go up really much faster than the value of Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin, and that's really was the sign, like, okay, this thing is ready to explode again. And that was really missing in this cycle with Bitcoin BTC, because the amount of transaction couldn't go up, but it was also missing in the amount of US dollars sent over Bitcoin BTC. It wasn't there. And so I thought that we were not ready for a bull market, but since then, actually, we did go up a lot after Corona crash, and we reached all-time high. So I've changed my mind, and I believe that yes, we are ready for the last phase of the bull market here, which is the most profitable one and the craziest one. As one you reach all-time high, you set a new all-time high quite quickly, and everything goes up a lot in value. But it's very interesting because usually the biggest coins first, and then it trickles down. And so we saw it already with Bitcoin BTC, went already through its all-time high to 40K, back at 30K now. We start to see it now with Ethereum, just breached its all-time high of $1,300. So likely will go up a lot as the first now. And Bitcoin BCH is next in line, together with some other coins in the top 5, top 10, and will pump a lot and breach their all-time high and go a lot higher. And for Bitcoin BCH, that's we're at $400, $500. The all-time high was $4,000, and from there it will probably set a new all-time high. So, and if I look at this NVT, the NVT ratio, like the value of Bitcoin BCH is very low. We are at 5 or 10 billion compared to the amount of transactions that it has, or the amount of US dollar that's sent over the network. It's actually a very cheap buy still. Even though we're at $500, it used to be $200. We're still actually very low, very close to the lows. We're not very far away from the all-time highs, and that's why it's actually valued very cheaply. And I think this is one of the best buys. And it's not my personal opinion only. If you look at other websites like Coin Fair Value, for example, just like use a lot of indicators to judge how cheap is a certain coin based on its compared to its utility and usage. Bitcoin BCH just sticks out as one of the cheapest buys you can do. And also it's because it's one of the most hated coins in the general crypto community. It's really like being bullied into smallness. But that creates an amazing opportunity for the smart investor. And I'm continuing to stash more Bitcoin Cash. I'm selling some Ethereum today for some more Bitcoin Cash, because I used to be able to I used to sell Bitcoin Cash, and I got 2 Ethereum for 1 Bitcoin Cash. But today I'm able to buy with 1 Ethereum 3 Bitcoin Cash. So it's like 6 times cheaper compared to a year or 2 years ago versus Ethereum. So it's a great trade to make, and I hope many others stash strong now Bitcoin Cash, because bull or bear, it is cheap compared to so many things, and very likely going to be a great investment. So thanks so much, Paul, for giving me the chance to talk about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just to give my own perspective, Like, I have never seen so much positive energy and collaboration and people just being united in working towards the future of Bitcoin Cash right now. I can understand people's hesitancy and the issues that were in Bitcoin Cash 2 years ago, even a year ago, but that has now gone. And I don't think a lot of people have realized that, especially investors, business people. I'm hoping this message is going to get out there that Bitcoin Cash is absolutely focused and united towards working towards peer-to-peer electronic cash now. I'm not going to give any investment advice, but I can say for sure that Bitcoin Cash has a hell of a lot going for it. And I feel this is like an unknown thing. So it's really key that we get this message out there.
Yeah, well, I also invest in stocks a lot, and I invest in Tesla big when it was cheap, and I got my timing right. I made good money, but of course I exited too soon, so that may that be a lesson for the BCH investors that don't exit too soon. Now it's a clear buy. You can stash it, but don't sell it before 10K at least, because yeah, there's the potential at least. But look at stock investing company, and you're investing in the people. You learn that quite quickly that, yeah, the business model is important and the growth is super important. All these things, there's evidence, but it all starts with the person that leads the project and the attitude. And are they focused constantly on the long term? And are they constantly sacrificing the short term gains for long term gains or not? And that's what it's about. And in cryptocurrency, these fundamentals of investing are totally ignored. But it's just spectacular indeed how the leadership of Bitcoin Cash has changed. That never happened, to my knowledge, in a cryptocurrency that is of any size. Yes, it happened with smaller project when Monero was starting out. The lead dev was kicked out. It had another name. But it was a very small project. But with a big project, that never happened, that the lead implementation was changed. And it's really, I found it also unbelievable how the fundamentals of Bitcoin Cash have changed so much by the change of leadership from basically a benevolent dictator, as he called himself, who was not actually benevolent. He was mostly a dictator that was not so benevolent, to a group of people that really carry the ideals of um, of Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer currency, widely shared, and so much cooperation indeed going on. It's very spectacular, and these fundraisers keep on going. Like there's now Newt raising another 500 BCH or so after raising also 500 BCH 4 months ago or so, and I support them and many others do, and so this voluntary funding will probably continue very strong, and especially as the value of Bitcoin Cash goes up, many people will become more, um, will share more of their wealth they create in Bitcoin Cash, because of course many people sitting on losses still today investing in Bitcoin Cash, but that will improve a lot over time. So yeah, I totally agree with you that fundamentals change so much, such a positive atmosphere, and people have no clue about it, even not in the crypto world. I have no clue about what has happened in Bitcoin Cash. Maybe some smaller project like Dash or Bitcoin SV, they've been following a little bit what's been happening in Bitcoin Cash and can see the change. And some of these people are starting to come back or take a look again at Bitcoin Cash. But the broader crypto market has no clue about it yet. But they will likely discover it simply because of the results. And the results now finally starting to show of explosive growth in usage. And we didn't touch upon the project even of any hatch, and DeFi on Bitcoin Cash has launched also now. And I'm also going to start using it a lot. It's just spectacular what they offer there, to be able to basically hedge the value of your BCH without touching any fiat, without any counterparty risk, or being able to leverage BCH and make even more gains as a counterparty, without touching any fiat, without getting any loans from anybody, without having to sign up anywhere or do KYC. It's unbelievable the innovations that, and with very cheap transaction costs, because yes, Ethereum offers DeFi, but it's $100 per transaction. It's ridiculous. They are not scaling fast enough, and there are many hacks happening there. So even there, Bitcoin Cash is having a competitive offer now, and that's just unbelievable, I think. So I'm very bullish. Thanks so much, Paul.
Excellent. Well, it's been fascinating chatting with you, Mark. So a huge thank you for coming on and bringing all your insights to our listeners. And thank you to all our listeners as well. If you've enjoyed this podcast or any other of our podcasts, please like and subscribe, and share them. It's really, really important that we get as many people to know about Bitcoin Cash as possible. So an easy way for you to do that is just go and like this video. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.